All right, and we're back for another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, and Inside Sports Fantasy Football. We appreciate everyone listening to all of our great shows. And if you can, please give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or like us, follow us, subscribe to our shows any way you can to support us. Tell a friend, even if they've got a basketball fan or a pop culture fan out there, about our shows. We'd be truly glad if you did. Some troubling times indeed. On the verge of what could be an announcement this week, although I will ask our guest about that, about the rest of the season that could take place for the NBA. There's still so many troubling things about what's going on right now within our society and within our culture. Things that are going down, obviously, due to this stemming from the death of George Floyd, just being the tipping point in our society for some real action that needs to be made. Some of it's been good, some of it's been positive as far as the dialogue and also the protesting, and some of it hasn't been good as far as the looting and the violence. And here to talk about that, plus what the NBA has in mind for the rest of the season, plus a little bit more than that if we have time, is my good friend. You got to go ahead and check out what he's doing today at LakerHolics.net. Be part of the conversation today at LakerHolics.net. It is a good man indeed. I know him as Tom Wong, but you know him as LakerTom. And LakerTom, I'm sorry if I'm not in the greatest of moods because of what's going on in our country. It's not really a time to be jovial, but we do have to go ahead and address the issues. And as somebody who wants to go ahead and update people on what's going on with the NBA and all the rumors out there, this cannot go unnoticed as well.
How you doing, Gerald? It's tough times for all of us watching what's going on in the country, and it's heartbreaking in many ways, and hopefully encouraging. As I said before the show, I've always been one of those believers that out of great tragedies come great triumphs. So I'm hoping that all of these various things that are happening that are destroying our country, the COVID-19 pandemic, the economic chaos that's resulting from it, and now the racial strife that's running across the country. I'm hoping that we can find people inspired by the needs that are so desperate out there that we're going to see a great solutions come before us, and starting with an election that really turns things around. As you said, it's just one of those tough times, and it sort of just derails everything that you're thinking about with basketball, and it's hard to separate it, and it's hard to keep the politics out of it, even on the website. We generally don't talk on LakerHolics.net about politics. I've let some of that come through when we had the pandemic, and then we backed off of it again, and now it's almost inevitable that you almost have to talk about it just because of the positions taken by many of the Lakers players, many of the NBA stars, many of the people involved in the sport, right at a point in time when the NBA is getting ready to make a decision on Thursday of what they're going to do. We all of a sudden, and I have a hunch that that decision may be postponed until next week.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
if that was something.
rightfully so. I just don't think you want to make an announcement. You don't want to detract from the announcement, and you also want to have time to absorb the impact and repercussions that could come out of this entire thing. I'm just praying that we'll see cooler heads prevail, and more examples of peaceful cooperation between the police departments and the protesters. There were some just heartwarming situations where police officers knelt down with protesters and walked and marched with them and so forth. And those are the types of approaches that we have to have if we're going to solve an endemic problem like the racism in this country.
Absolutely, because I believe there is systemic racism in our country. We've seen it come to light on many occasions, too numerous to count. It is a tragedy that has long been overdue in trying to be fixed. And the voices have been out there trying to speak about this for many years, but not enough people have been wanting to listen. And hopefully now this isn't going to be just part of another vicious cycle where this tragedy about George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and others that have had to endure and had to go through and lost their lives for continue on spiraling down. It just is another part of this vicious circle that we're continuing in year, 2 years, 3 years from down the line, as we seem to continuously do. I mean, Charlottesville all over again, and before that, myself going through even just a smidgen of what I remember in Southern California during Rodney King and the unfortunate events there, and it's just a tragedy, and it's needless. It in the fact that this should already have been stopped. This should already have been prevented. This should already be something as part of our lives that, you know, as far as systemic racism, that's been gotten rid of. And unfortunately, it hasn't been yet. And there is a need to act, and there's a need to protest, and there's a need to go ahead and voice your opinions. And it needs to be everybody. It needs to be everybody that says, you know what, this has got to stop, and this has got to stop now. And this has led to a lot of violence, a lot of looting, a lot of damage, a lot of property being destroyed, a lot of people being injured or killed, a lot of reporters, which, for me with my journalism background is truly disheartening to hear that journalists are being caught in the fray and being intentionally targeted by both protesters and police primarily, which is even more troubling. But the issue of systemic racism has to be stopped. It has to be quashed. It has to be dealt with. And there's got to be some point in time where people draw a line in the sand, and they're drawing it in the and they're drawing that line in the sand right now. And it's just got to be done. It's got to be dealt with. It's got to be dealt with sooner rather than later.
There was a wonderful article in Medium by our former President Barack Obama. And Obama made some points which are really, I think, points that really stick with me. And that is that you can't ignore politics. You can't just go out there and protest and feel like your vote doesn't count, because the only way you're really going to make change, the only way you're going to differentiate this situation from the same problem we have with gun control and the same problem we've had with racism over the years, where it's tiny step forwards and then long periods of just continuing to let it fester and grow. Obama said that people have got to vote. It really comes down to that. And even as much important as the presidential election is, and the impact we can see on the nature of the problem that we're facing right now with the type of leadership that we have at the federal level, it's also the state and local people that you vote for. Those are the ones who really impact the type of police departments that you have and the type of approach that you have toward minority communities. So the one thing I'm hoping is the first and the most important thing that can come out of all of the tragedy and all of the violence that we're seeing. And as understandable as it is, with all of the anger and frustration, you can't condone that. You just can't do it. Instead, what you've got to do is focus on this next election in every city, every county, every state, and at the national level. You need to vote in people who have the right approach, who are going to solve the problem. And that's the single most important thing that every single person in this society can do. Whether you're white, black, Asian, doesn't matter. You need to go out there and exercise your right to choose what kind of country you want to live in.
And this is something, again, like you and I have just said, it's long overdue. I hope the protests peacefully will continue, because voices do need to be heard. The African American community needs to be treated, and all communities that have been treated harshly due to racism need to stand up, and this is their time, especially the African American community, to stand up and say enough's enough, and we need to make changes, and we need to make changes right away.
Yeah, it's just such a tough situation. I mean, personally, I have my own experience with this situation of the looters. Um, it's really a frustrating thing. Back in 1992 in San Francisco, there was on the anniversary of the Rodney King situation. There were riots in downtown San Francisco, and at that point in time, my business was running. I had a leather apparel store in 2 or 3 locations, including one down in the Union Square area of San Francisco. Um, I was in Hong Kong actually putting together orders for the following Christmas. And I opened up and people came running up to me and said, "You better turn on CNN." And I turned on CNN and saw people crashing the windows of the store that I had. It was like a 3,000 square foot store, a very large store. We lost over $150,000 in inventory. Basically ended up having to file bankruptcy because we couldn't replace the inventory. It took 6 months for the insurance company to pay off. In the meantime, business, we didn't have anything to sell and nothing to do with it. So I feel for all of these local business owners who are people mostly in the neighborhoods that are getting trashed right now. That they're, it's just, and it is a small minority of the people who are taking advantage of it for either political or personal selfish reasons to loot and cause despair and undermine the whole impact of the protest. And add ammunition into the guns of those who don't want to see any changes really happen. So it's a heartbreaking situation for me as I watch these various merchants and guys trying to protect their stores. It was heartwarming to see a lot of protesters trying to intercede and prevent people from destroying stores and wrecking their own neighborhoods and so forth. But it's a situation that you can't condone it, but you sure can understand the frustration and anger that goes with it. I'm just hoping that out of this whole thing that we'll see some inspiring effort to make change in this country, and it won't be another one of those situations where everybody just goes back to some sort of normal. When you combine it with the COVID situation and the economic trauma that we're going to be going through, everybody knows there's not a new normal. There's not, the old normal doesn't exist any longer, and this is an opportunity that is ripe for change, ripe for dramatic change, and I hope that we can all bond together and take advantage of that.
Let's hope so, my friend. Let's hope there's a change for the better because, again, like I've told you earlier in this podcast, it's just been a vicious cycle that I've seen throughout the 50 plus years of my life, and I want it to end. I want there to be a society where my daughters and my children can live in a world that can be free of systemic racism, of who they are, and just basically be judged and valued and appreciated by the character that they have and the way they live their life.
Yeah, it's got to start with the children. That's really the whole story of it. It's kind of funny. One of the girls on the basketball team I coach is an African American girl, and her mother and father have actually set strict rules for her that she has to behave so much better than any of her peers, just simply because she's African American. And you think of that all these changes that we're talking about, those are changes that aren't going to affect us as much as they're going to affect our children, and in my case, our grandchildren. It's a new future that we can build, so we have to take advantage of the opportunity that's been afforded by all of the tragedies that are going on to try to make something really permanent and sustainable, constructive about this entire situation. And I think a lot of it starts with free preschool for every kid in America, making sure that we can pull them out of whatever neighborhood they are and make sure that they get the same quality of education as my grandkids get living in a nice suburban white neighborhood. Every kid in America deserves that chance. For me, education is really the hallmark of the whole thing. You can't. There's a million ways that you can attack this situation, but in real sense, the biggest bet is to bet on the children and bet on those to come. Bet on them because it's their future that we're talking about.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, we're going to see hopefully the changes for a positive world, for a better world in the days, weeks, and months to come. I'm hoping this will be the straw that breaks, something's back as far as, it snaps and wakes people up that need to be woken up as far as systemic racism in our society, and I'm hoping for a positive change that will have a better outcome for all people in our society, that we can treat each other better, be respectful of each other a lot more, and in cases with the law and dealing with the law and the law dealing with the people out there, that we can choose a better path than the one we have taken so far.
Yep, definitely need to have change.
Well, be that as
On
it may,
basketball.
yeah, on to basketball indeed. Just something that we need to go ahead and voice out. Again, we don't like to go ahead and talk too much the way of politics. Sometimes I have to calm LakerTom down when it comes to certain issues in the past weeks in regards to the coronavirus, but I think this needed to be addressed, and it's something that hopefully can be addressed in the weeks and months to come. But it is the NBA that is also to be concerned about, because there is a matter of how they're going to go ahead and decide officially to continue the season in some format. And a vote at this time is scheduled for Thursday. Although I'm thinking when this hits, this podcast goes up, or at some point in time during the week, they're going to go the same way as in my pop culture talk. PlayStation and Sony did, as canceling in their event because they wanted, as they put it, more important voices to be heard. I think the NBA might follow suit, as we were talking about earlier. But still, let's talk about some of the ideas that have been floating around. And the one that was preeminent, that was talked about right around the time of, I think it was Friday, when Adam Silver called the other owners and called talked to the GMs earlier in the week or whatnot, was a prospective season about 20 to 22 teams. In recent hours before leading up to this podcast, there's been a movement by small market teams to raise the ante up to the entire 30 team scenario, with a group play being talked about, with a play-in tournament being talked about, and still so many different scenarios out there. I'm going to go right off the bat and tell you I'm not in love with the group play thing. It works for soccer. It works for European soccer. It doesn't work for the NBA, and it will take away everything that the top teams, and yes, I'm biased because I'm a Lakers fan. I'm not going to tell you differently. But even if they weren't, it would be unfair to the teams who have already 60 plus games into the season, have worked so hard and tried to achieve. I think no matter how you slice it, a group play scenario is not the right one for the NBA.
I agree with you 100%, Gerald. I have to say one thing that really still impresses me about the NBA in comparison to Major League Baseball and the NFL, and that is their commissioner. It's kind of a unique thing when you see what happens in most of the leagues, where the commissioner basically rules with an iron fist, so to speak. In the NBA, it's a different story because the players have a lot more say than they do in the NFL or Major League Baseball. And the one thing that has come clear, especially under the reign of Adam Silver, is the owners pretty much trust their commissioner to do the right thing, because he's shown over and over that he's not afraid to make changes, to address controversial situations, and to make the right decisions for the league and for its players and its fans. And the one thing that jumps out, even after they've had this extensive polling of all of the general managers of all of the teams with all of these various options, is, I mean, they put a complete list of things. They've covered almost every possible suggestion that's been made in the media in this poll that they made to the general managers. And then the Players Association basically did their own polling of all of the players. and getting their feedback and so forth. And the net as they meet on Thursday, if they actually do have the governor's meeting on Thursday, almost everybody has unanimously said that we're going to approve Silver's plan. Whatever it is, we're going to approve whatever Adam Silver thinks is best to do. He's done a great job of building a consensus around the league that okay, this is a controversial thing. There's all sorts of options. Every single team has their own personal bias in it. As a Laker fan, the last thing I want to see is denigration or a delegitimizing of the championship, so that people will put a bigger asterisk next to it. But I think that's probably one of the most important things about this entire situation is that the NBA is unanimously behind whatever Adam Silver decides is going to be the plan. And it's going to be interesting to see what he comes up with. I wrote an article in Medium and on Lakerholics.net where basically I said that it looked to me like the 22-team play-in tournament probably is going to be the solution. You try to make sense of that, and you look at that. If you've got 16 teams that supposedly are already in the league playoffs because they're the ones that are 8 in each division, 8 in each conference that have the best records. And then they're talking about including in that 6 other teams, 5 from the Western Conference and 1 from the Eastern Conference, who are within 6 games of that 8th playoff spot. So the sort of what you're envisioning, as far as I can tell, would be an 8-team play-in tournament, basically, with those 6 teams plus the number 8 seeds in each of the conferences, where they'd play in and decide who are going to be the 15th and 16th teams to go into the playoffs. If they do that route, I don't see how they maintain conferences as the way that they're determining it. I think you've got 5 of those 6 teams that they're within 6 games are in the Western Conference, and the only one from the Eastern Conference is the Washington Wizards. So basically, you're going to end up with an unbalanced number of Western and Eastern teams, most probably. And it almost necessitates that you do a 1-16 seeding. As a Laker fan, I'm all for a 1-16 seeding if they decide to do that, because it means the Clippers and Bucks are in the other bracket opposite of us.
But I want to say this: there's there's something to spicing up that and the 1-16, but there's also something to spicing up the season and getting some interest with a plan. I kind of like the plan between 22 teams. I don't know about 24, but the teams that are still considered competitive is around 22. I think from what I from what I heard and from what I've seen. And I think 20 to 22 is fine. Going to 30 is, to me, I don't know.
I think that's crazy. I agree with you there.
To me, it's ridiculous because
20 gives you an odd number unless you include the 7th seeds.
Well, you're also going to have 6 or 7 teams that just are going to go through the motions, that don't care, that don't want to be there because
their players are probably eating themselves out of shape.
Yeah, well, they probably don't want to even be there because the risk that are inherently involved, right. And those teams, including the Golden State Warriors, even with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson coming back, if that was the case, that still probably would not be able to get them out of such a disadvantageous hole that they would be put in, because even if we went to a group play, there would be some type of scenario where the Lakers would be given a better shot than the Warriors. So I think for at least 6 to 8 teams, it's not worth their money and not worth their time going back. And you've heard already some of the players that says, if we don't have something to play for, why should we go back?
Right. I think that attitude's probably already eliminated some of the players on the lower teams from even staying in shape. The play-in. If it were me,
I'm just going to say this. Let me say this. Okay. If you're being paid $1 million a year to play basketball, right. You should be in shape year round. You should be in some semblance of decent shape year round, because to not be is doing your contract or your payment agreement, I should say, your payment agreement, what you be paid for, it's like, okay, you can't
It's
your
like giving up
job.
on your craft.
Yeah, giving up on your craft, but also as well just the commitment that you make. Let's say LakerTom, you make a commitment to the company that you run and that the businesses that you own, like you talked about earlier in the show. If you just wanted to stop for a couple months and just say, you know what, not my deal, not my
Right.
deal. What does that say for the employees of the companies that you ran?
That doesn't say much. The other side of it is, you guys want to get paid, man. You got to pay.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah, exactly. And
Um,
and we always hear the stories about certain players that come in the league out of shape, and they'd always talk about. In fact, Shaq was so famous for it.
Jack was
Uh,
on my mind when you were talking.
yeah, about playing himself into shape, quote unquote, and it always
Well,
used to.
he wanted to stay in shape on the Lakers dollar, not his dollar.
Yeah, and it always used to tick Kobe off, and a lot of that led into the fact that we don't sit here and talk about the Lakers winning 6 titles instead of 3.
Yeah.
But need I digress? It just to me, it's a commitment to the craft that you have, that you should be some type of semblance of decent shape, because you can't always get it back. You'll get injured. You're more likely to sustain an injury and things of that nature. So yeah, it should be something that the players should be always cognizant of. But I agree with them when they say if there's nothing to play for, or if the odds are so far stacked against you, it's not really worth it. Going there and playing, okay, you work 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks in a training camp just to go there and be
Play a
outed
half
within,
dozen games.
yeah,
Yeah.
or and be outed in a week. No matter how much money it's going to cost you with the local television markets, it's just not worth it for some of these players.
I think that the play-in tournament is going to happen. I think, and for a couple of reasons. One, they need revenue, and they want to make sure that these playoffs are really going to generate a lot of revenue, because they're not going to have the fans in the stands. And secondly, I think it's inevitable. You know, we've seen it happen in baseball, we've seen it happen in football, and the more teams that can be involved in the playoffs, the more successful that league is going to be. So I think a play-in tournament moving forward is going to be part of the formula, no matter what happens. And so there's good reasons for Silver to want to start that this season, because this season and next season are the 2 seasons that are going to be very difficult for the league to generate the kind of revenue and the players to make as much money as they're used to making. The 1-16 thing is what I find fascinating, because generally everybody's been in favor of it except for the travel situation, that it would cause a lot more travel, especially if you're having East Coast teams play West Coast teams and it's not the NBA Finals. But I don't see how they can avoid doing it this season if they have a play-in tournament with 6 Western Conference and 2 Eastern Conference teams. I mean, how do you solve that problem then if you don't seed the teams 1-16? And then what happens next year? I think this could be a real big move if they have the seeding of 1-16 on the teams. Just looking at it, and even not even counting the extra wild card you throw in of having a play-in tournament, but looking at the matchups that you got when you look at the 2 brackets there, it's fascinating. I mean, it looks like a better set of matchups than running the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference in separate tournaments. So to me, I'm actually hoping that they actually do go through with the play-in tournament and the 1-16 seeding. And I think if they do that, that may be the format going forward, because it sure makes a lot of sense in adding more teams. You get more teams, more fans still involved longer in the season. You get more revenue, and you get some great new matchups in the playoffs that you never ever see. You know, I think it's an exciting aspect to be thrown in it, and those are the types of moves that excite the game and create new interest in the fans that the league is going to need to do to get through the next couple of years, to set that new normal that we're going to expect, especially without fans, at least for this season and possibly next season too. I don't know whether a lot of people are going to be willing in January of 2021 to crowd in with 20,000 other fans screaming and yelling, which is exactly what is the worst thing to do in a case of a pandemic. You got all of those droplets flying all over the place. I mean, we've proven already that that's where most of these close crowds of people that are making a lot of noise and breathing hard and yelling is the formula for COVID-19 to spread like crazy. So anyway, I'm hopeful that that we'll see something really exciting come out of the tragedies that we've had this year in the NBA. That all of a sudden we'll see a formula moving forward that by the time 2 or 3 years ago we'll be looking back and saying that there was a real silver lining in the COVID-19 thing for the NBA, for major league sports, that it basically got a little bit more innovation and some new ideas going that really revved up the sports.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, it's going to be some major decisions being made whenever they make it. And as long as our tensions that we currently have and the protesting and the looting and the violence still takes place, it would probably not be the most apropos time to go ahead and announce something like that, even though you and I want it very much as far as an official target for the end of the season. I know July 31st was the most talked about date. That was rumored on Friday and Saturday. But yeah, it's just something that maybe they need to go ahead and, look at the room that's there and see maybe it's not the right or appropriate time to talk about it or come up with something officially. But I'm hoping they will as soon as I'm hoping they will as soon as possible because we sure need it. We sure need it.
We need that escape more than we have ever needed it before. I'll tell you that.
That's for sure, my friend. That's for sure. Well, I'll tell you what, it's great talking to you once again. It's LakerTom from LakerHolics.net. I cannot thank you enough for being a part of it, being part of today's show. If you have any questions for us, you can always reach out, LakersFastBreak at yahoo.com, at LakerTom on Twitter, or at LakersFastBreak on Twitter as well. We truly appreciate any comments or questions that you have for our show. My friend, there's still a little bit more to talk about on today's show. Cannot forget J.R. Smith before we head on out. J.R. Smith, we got to talk about because he had an interesting weekend per se. That's on both Saturday and Sunday, so we can't forget about him before we head on out. But what's happening right now at LakerHolics.net, and before we talk about that, even I want to know your thoughts on why winning this championship is key for LeBron, AD, who went bike riding recently. But again, we will talk about that at the end of the show. And the Los Angeles Lakers.
Well, I've always felt there are these critical moments in time, turning points, when everything changes for a franchise. It could be the last minute shot that wins a championship, that launches a dynasty. The Lakers have had several of those situations. It could be a game that keeps a team from getting knocked out of the playoffs, and then they go on and win 2 or 3 championships. The Lakers right now, this season is so critical. It is either going to slam the window down possibly on a lot of the optimism of a championship window, or it's going to unlock the doors for greatness. You look at LeBron James. I think LeBron James was en route to win a championship with the Lakers this year. And that would have been a huge step for him toward eventually being recognized as the greatest player, even greater than Michael Jordan. If he wins this championship this year, he'd be favored next year. And he could end up with 2 or 3 championships. He could even eventually tie Michael Jordan with 6 championships and surpass Magic Johnson and Kobe Bryant. So for LeBron, I think especially at 35 years old, this is a year he has to win. And I think he's going into the playoffs with that attitude. And it looked for a while like he might not get the chance. And I think once he's got the chance, he's not going to fail it. I think we're going to see maybe one of the greatest playoff LeBrons we've ever seen. And then you look at Anthony Davis. He's made this big decision, forced his way out of New Orleans to the Lakers to play alongside LeBron James, both clutch sports clients. He could be, if he wins 2 or 3 championships with LeBron, he could be in position to then become the next best player on the planet for the next generation, for the next decade, if you will. Just like LeBron was the player of the 2000s, he could be the 2010s. AD could become the player of the 2020s. So I think it's really critical to him that everything that he's gambled in forcing his way out of New Orleans and onto the Lakers and to play with LeBron and so forth. This is a critical season for him. Not only, I mean, if he fails to win this championship this year and fails next year, it's even possible that he might not stay with the Lakers because he's going to have his 10-year anniversary at that point in time. And as a 10-year player, he'll be eligible for a Supermax. So that's critical for him. Then you look at the Lakers after 6 years of not even making the playoffs, to have not only the tragedy of Kobe's death, but also the COVID-19 pandemic hit them and the suspension of the season. They're within one championship of tying the Boston Celtics for the most championships in the NBA. If they can win that this year and be favored next year, they can surpass Boston and put them in the rearview mirror as far as the greatest NBA franchise. So I think this season is a critical one for the Lakers. It's the season that can unlock the door for the legacies of both LeBron James and Anthony Davis and the entire Lakers franchise. And I believe that the Lakers are going to be really focused going into the playoffs, and they're going to do whatever plan Adam Silver comes up with. The Lakers are ready, and they're going to have a championship season this year.
Well, let's certainly hope so. I mean, there's a lot of talk and speculation because the Lakers will not be playing in Staples Center. That's a disadvantage for them and the Bucks. I know a lot of love.
Best road team in the league. Best road team in the league.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope it plays out that way because a lot of love has been given the way of the Clippers, and who a lot of people are saying because it's not being played in the Staples Center and playoff series between the two would favor as far as from a home court advantage, even on the road games, quote unquote, for the Lakers.
Our 7-game home court advantage.
Yeah, exactly. So think of it like the Los Angeles Chargers, having an entire season with no fans, because it seems that's the case for the Los Angeles Chargers having.
They might do better because of that. They learned how to play without fans.
Well, yeah, that's true, and then. Fact that they're opening a new arena a new stadium at some point in time to all fans from the other team would be really truly depressing. But need I digress? But yeah, with the Lakers and Clippers I know have been given more love in the past few days from experts because of this type of scenario that could play out on a one area format, and I don't know about that's going to be the case, but the Lakers have played well on the road and have played well as a unit and a team, and I feel that they should be given every opportunity and every chance to prove why that they played so well over the course of the season. It is going to be a tough matchup. We'll have to wait and see how it lays out. I kind of like the 1-16 the scenario, or with the play-in scenario coming up right after that. Well, they would match up against the Bucks, which would be advantageous for us. And although a Lakers-Clippers finals would be something that I would definitely like to see.
I think the Clippers and Bucks would be a hell of a matchup in the bracket, and it's interesting to see what happens. I think there's a lot of Laker haters out there, so we may not see the 1-16. They may jimmy something up or change the way the normal brackets work.
Well, hold on. Can we ask the people that have been making the jokes online that they've been looting the Staples Center and went to go ahead and take all the things away from the Clippers as far as their titles and found nothing there?
Right.
We get the joke. It was great the first time, but come on. This is a time of seriousness and tragedy, and we need to focus on that, not always slam the Clippers. but the
I
first
don't
time
mind slamming the clickers.
well, the first time it was kind of funny, but when you see the same post in different ways and described in different ways on the Laker forums for the 90th time, okay, the joke is over. The joke is done. And there's at some point in
Some
time
jokes are always funny.
well, the Clippers at
Carol,
some
that's
point in
all I'll
time,
say.
just the odds that they're going to have to get it together at some point in time. Let's hope it's not this year. Let's hope the Lakers can continue their winning ways and go ahead and prove better than the Clippers once again, and also the rest of the NBA for that matter. But yeah, we'll wait and see what happens when it comes to the Lakers, and it is a key to them winning the championship and tying the Boston Celtics. It would be a great way to punctuate such a turbulent season.
Yep.
So many ups and downs, so many things that have gone right, so many things that have gone wrong. Some of it without, some of it without. Some of it was not be able to be within their capacity to handle or within their realm, like Kobe's tragic, death and what happened in China and things of that nature. Some of it was within their realm that they could have controlled, like the issues with the taking the money and all that. So it's been an up and down season so far for the Lakers. We've seen the really good and the really bad, and I'm hoping it gets punctuated on a really good note for a championship for the Lakers. And I think more than any other season that I know of as a Lakers fan in my 51 years, that I think that this season the Lakers deserve to win the championship more than any other.
It would be the ultimate tribute to Kobe.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, it's been a great episode. I cannot thank you enough for being a part of it. But before we head on out and we talk J.R. Smith, because I'm saving that for last, my friend, you got to go ahead.
JR, it's kind of interesting. It was like a little clutch sports bicycle trip.
Well, let's just again, let's save that for last. You got to go ahead and save that for last because not everybody has this extreme access to social media. Almost everybody out there, but not everybody. Let's go ahead and talk about what's going on at the place that you know so well and are so fond of, and that is LakerHolics.net.
Well, the latest big discussion on LakerHolics.net has been Fred VanVleet. There's a lot of talk in the media that the Raptors, because of their financial situation, having over 100, they're well over the salary cap and are right at the edge of the luxury tax threshold. They just gave out a huge payday to Pascal Siakam. Their OG Anunoby has got a huge payday coming. They have a lot of good guards, and Fred VanVleet is a free agent, an unrestricted free agent. And the problem facing Fred is that there's only one team that's a winning team with any cap space, which is the Miami Heat, and they don't need a point guard. Then there are four teams that are going to love to try to sign VanVleet. All of them are losing teams: the Knicks, the Atlanta Hawks, the Charlotte Hornets, and the Detroit Pistons. Those are the teams that have the money to sign him. So VanVleet's really in a unique situation because a team like the Lakers, and there will be other teams besides the Lakers, they can address him anytime they want to because he's a free agent. So they can go up to him and say, "Listen, we'll agree to pay you, let's say $22 million a year on a sign and trade deal, and the Lakers can offer Danny Green and Kyle Kuzma, and they can make a trade then that will work under the salary cap on a sign and trade for a $22 million contract for VanVleet. VanVleet can basically go to the Raptors and say, hey, listen, you either approve this deal with the Lakers, assuming that he reaches an agreement with the Lakers that he'd love to come and make $22 million and play with LeBron and AD and be in a championship contender. He says, or I'll sign and get the money from one of these other teams, and you'll get nothing. You'll walk away with nothing, whereas you can get a sign and trade with the Lakers. And this is like a replay of what happened last season. We saw 10 sign and trade deals after only 4 of them the previous 3 seasons. So this is a leverage situation where VanVleet has great leverage to get a sign and trade to a contending team. And I don't think that Fred VanVleet he wants his money, but I think he also wants to win. So I'm betting that there's a good chance that the Lakers might go after him. He's only 6'1". He's a small guard. I've normally been kind of prejudiced against small guards, but I watched this kid play in the playoffs last year and the year before, and he's a championship player, man. He really won that championship for them in Game 6. The way he shot the ball, the way he attacked the basket, the assists that he distributed. He's an 18-point per game, 7 assists, 4 rebound type of guy who plays good defense. He led the league in deflections this year. And I think he'd be a perfect fit on the Lakers next to LeBron and AD. Only 26 years old, 4 years in the league. And the Lakers could basically trade Danny Green and Kyle Kuzma for him. They'd probably have to throw in a first-round draft choice just to solidify it. And the competition won't come from the free agency teams. It'll come from another contending team that'd be willing to put up money and maybe have better trading chips to offer than we do. So a lot of it comes down to what Van Fleet wants to do. And it's an interesting situation. So that's one of the things that we've been discussing both on Twitter and on Lakerholics.net. And it's something that I think would be a great solution for the problem that the Lakers have. He would be their third scorer, obviously, and the second playmaker they need, especially when LeBron goes to the bench.
We'll wait and see what happens and what plays out in free agency, if it is Fred Van Vliet or someone else that they target, or for a trade. Could be a trade, that they might work out as well during the offseason. But there are some things and some holes that they need to address. And because of the salary cap and other extenuating circumstances due to coronavirus and basically the season in general and how it's played out, that it's going to necessitate some different thinking from the GM's office, or from the vice president's office, I should say. We'll have to see what plays out for the Lakers and for other NBA teams. It'll be very interesting. It was going to be kind of a little bit of a boring free agency period, but I think it's going to be interesting for altogether different reasons this time, and not because of a mass exodus or a mass, moving from one team to another. It's going to be because these teams have to get really creative if they want to go ahead and improve for next season.
And they're all businesses and who are going to be suffering dramatic revenue drops. Nobody likes to lose money. And a couple of the franchises the owners have very tough businesses that are going to really suffer. A couple of guys are in the cruise business, for example, and the hotel business, and those are really going to be hard hit industries.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. Obviously, being on a cruise is not the most attractive thing at this point in time. My family was trying to get me to go on one now for a couple of years, and that conversation ended with COVID-19. Let's just put it that way. And
might as well go to prison,
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's been really rough for the travel industry as a whole. We had to cancel our trip to, I think, end of July. Was going to go ahead and head somewhere, but that unfortunately was canceled. So a lot of plans being scrapped, but also we need to not forget the thousands of lives, the over 100,000 lives that have been lost, and the thousands more that have been adversely affected by the coronavirus. In the middle of all this that's going on, the racial tensions, the issues with the White House and all that there are still so many people dying from this contagious disease, and it's not slowing down too much because people are still, for various reasons, whether it's for the right or whether it's for good or whether it's for bad, or whether they just want to have fun, they're still getting together, not social distancing, not using masks, not using the proper precautions that are taking, and they're not respecting others, and it's showing up still in those stats that we see rising day in, day out. So we cannot forget about the pandemic that's going on and the reason why we were all staying at home in the first place, because it's some serious stuff, man, that's going on out there. We got so many different things that are trying to hit us on all sides in our society right now. It's a tough time for our country. It's a tough time indeed.
And they're closer. There's more tenuous connections between them than you'd really think, because first off, the COVID-19 pandemic has hit the Black community harder than any other community. It's highlighted a lot of and I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing such anger and frustration, because a lot of people are dying and a lot of people are sick. And they're the people who are on the front lines a lot of the time. They're the guys who are the paramedics or cleaning the hospitals or working in the grocery stores. And so that's tied to this whole racial thing of why it's exploding. And then the second thing I think that's an effect is that we've been in isolation for 2.5 months. And just like you saw people flocking to the beaches on Memorial Day in some of these areas, and not giving a dang about social distancing and wearing masks, I think we're seeing a big element of that in hooliganism that is involved in some of these protest rallies. People going out to the rallies because it's maybe I wasn't willing to go to the beach and crowd in there, but now I'm going to do this to protest the unfair death of George Floyd, and I'm going to do it for a good reason. And you get out there and you're packed in with a bunch of other people and everybody's screaming and yelling.
It's tough. It's tough.
I think a lot of people went out there to these protest rallies who might not have gone to them in a normal situation because they just were, it's partly cabin fever,
Yeah.
I feel it myself, wanting to. I went out and picked up takeout a couple of times last week. First time I've done that instead of DoorDash. It's just human nature that you want to get out, and if you've got an event where there's such a justifiable reason to go out and protest, it's hard not to do that. It's easy to talk yourself into that. So I think in a couple of weeks we may see the impact of that in some rises in cases, and unfortunately, inevitably, a rise in the number of people who die. It's all tied together, it's all connected to the government, that's the type of government leadership that we have right now, and the problems that have been systemic in this country since we started bringing over slaves.
And we'll continue to be that way unless we make a change and make a stand right now. And hopefully, we will make a stand that is definitive for the long term and not something, like I said before, be a vicious cycle once again.
Yep.
But there are more things that are going on. Whether you want to go ahead and speak out on what's going on with the racial tensions, the systemic racism, what's going on in Minneapolis and across the country, pay tribute to George Floyd and others who have tragically and needlessly died. You can go ahead and do so today, or talk about the NBA and the playoff scenarios and all that. You can go ahead and do so today at LakerHolics.net. Be part of the conversation today at LakerHolics.net. Well, my friend, before we head on out, we might have thought we had a troubling weekend, but we weren't J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith, who recently tried out for the Lakers and didn't get a job, it was actually given to Dion Waiters. It was funny because the first images I saw of J.R. Smith this weekend was on Saturday as he was bike riding way in the back behind and trying hard to keep up with AD and LeBron bike riding in Los Angeles on Saturday. And it seemed like to me like he was the little brother that was saying, "Hey, wait up for me," as he's trying to bike ride and keep up with LeBron.
The little brother was actually Rich Paul, who's a small guy trying to keep up with three pro athletes.
So he was actually way in the back, Rich Paul. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought it was JR. So my apologies.
But
there.
JR was trailing behind AD and LeBron.
Okay, so wait up. And on Sunday, his truck was damaged by looters, and TMZ decided to go ahead, as TMZ only does. And well, actually these days a lot of people are actually filming what's going on with the looting and the destruction. And he decided to go ahead and take it out on the individual who was damaging his truck. And there's no place for damaging anyone's property, and we've talked about that through the show. And the adverse effects if you go ahead and damage the property is the property owner or the said owner of the property. In this case, J.R. Smith will let you know definitively, and I will just say that
he picked the wrong truck to damage.
Yeah, he picked the wrong truck to damage as the social media that's out there. Just type in J.R. Smith on Twitter and you'll see what we mean. Yeah, he beat the snot out of somebody really harshly, and I can't say it isn't deserved because it is deserved, but this can't be a good look for him if he wants to try and get a job back in the NBA, or if they expand the rosters, which has also been talked about by the NBA as a proposal, and the GM's really wanting it, an expansion of rosters, him being added on as a 14th or 15th man on the Lakers roster.
You know, have you ever had your car broken into, Gerald?
On more than one occasion. On more than one.
I had a Porsche one time that got broken into like 6 times, 6 new radios. And by the 6th time, I was basically sitting out there in the car with a gun. I mean, you almost feel like capital punishment would not be enough for guys who just destroy your car. Just like you almost want to leave it unlocked just so they don't smash in all the windows, rip out the seats, and so forth. So as far as JR goes, I was cheering for him all the time while he beat the hell out of that guy.
Well,
I just cannot. People who break into houses and break into my cars, that's the punishment should be a lot worse than it is.
Well, while it was just deserved, it's still not a great look for him because he's trying to get a job, one last job, maybe, because this is the end of the line pretty much for J.R. Smith.
Yep.
He is in his mid-30s, and guards in their mid-30s usually are not lasting that much longer in the NBA. So,
Lakers need an enforcer.
Yeah.
Who's our enforcer?
Well, right now, maybe it's Morris. Per se, or maybe it's Howard.
It should be LeBron, but we don't want to get him thrown out of the game.
No, we don't. It'd probably be Howard.
Howard's going to say Howard too.
Yeah, Howard's the guy. As I told you before,
got a plus for me. I think we ought to add him as our 16th player if the league allows it.
Well, there are other options out there as well, but we'll wait and see. But yeah, Howard is the guy. As I told you,
it's a heroic performance, Gerald. A heroic move by JR. I completely disagree.
Well, I think it's deserved, but also you have to show some restraint in the type of position that you're in.
Oh, man.
But the emotions can get the best of you, and it's understandable what happens. I know I would be mad too, and I'm not going to sit here and say differently. If I was in that situation, I could have done the same exact thing, and but it's all about optics. You don't know TMZ, or you don't know that video is going to be blasted upon social media.
Well, TMZ ain't following you and me around, so.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But it's actually people taking a video and selling it to TMZ. That's pretty much what it. There were a couple people.
All of this stuff happening today is because of our cell phone cameras.
Yeah, and there was a couple of people that tried to stop JR, but when he's 5 inches taller than you, it's really hard to say no. But right. I'm hoping for everything for J.R. Smith. I know he's had an up and down career. I know he's seen the highest of highs and seen the lowest of lows. And, I'm hoping for a career that ends on the right note for him. I'd like to see his at least one more contribution made by him on the way out. But yeah, Dwight Howard is our enforcer at this point in time. I told you, he comes in, gets 2 fouls, pushes someone around, and gets on the verge of a fight every single game that he was playing. But it's worked out so well so far.
What he does is he lets people know that we're going to be physical. And that's what Frank Vogel says is his job.
Well,
Frank doesn't mind that at all.
Yeah, it doesn't mind that at all, and hopefully it will continue throughout the playoffs.
Yep.
But again, from the NBA, we'll have to wait and see. And my thoughts and my prayers and my hopes for a change that's permanent in this country hopefully will be done sooner rather than later. And my thoughts and prayers are for those who are currently battling this, protesting against this. Keep safe, LakerTom. Keep safe, listeners and protesters out there. Keep fighting that good fight. Do it with your voice. Do it with your heart,
Do it
and
with your
don't
vote.
do it with your vote. But please, just if you can, just don't try to do it anymore as far as with violence or with looting. It's not the answer. That's not serving the memory of George Floyd, and that's certainly not serving the memory of all those who have tragically died before him in much the same manner. And we need to make change in this country, and we need to make it now, so we avoid more issues like we're currently going through.
Agree 100%, Gerald.
Well, my friend, it's been a great episode. I cannot thank you enough. Hopefully, next time we talk, it's a little bit more cheery. I don't know if we'll have an answer on the NBA season. Again, we're expecting them to delay it in some form or fashion because of optics. But we'll wait and see what the NBA does. But if it does make a change for the season and something comes definitively about, or if there's more NBA news or Laker news, you know you're going to get it right here at the Lakers Fast Break podcast.